the Democrats have a bill already written that they can start with?
Actually, there are bills that have been introduced.
Already?
Oh yeah, bipartisan bills.
Mm-hmm.
In this Congress.
Yes.
Okay.
Remember who?
Well,
And is
Lindsey Graham and Dick
Lindsey-
Durbin did
yeah,
a joint
right.
presser earlier today.
Yeah, I
basically
think that's
asking
something.
for, yeah, so.
And is the senator on any of those yet? I'm sure he will be, or I hope he will be.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Sometimes, you know, these co-sponsorships, they don't accept everybody that wants to be on it because they want a balance.
No, I get
So
it.
you have to, you know, like
Yeah, they-
queue up and
Right.
wait till it's your turn to join the bill.
But this is a pretty,
You know where he is on DACA.
pretty
Yes.
major issue.
It is.
You know, Charles Blow tweeted, New York Times tweeted this morning, and, you know, his Twitter account's kind of like the senator's. You go there sometimes because he's going to say exactly what you're thinking. He said, this president has confirmed that the power in this nation is with straight white men. Everyone else is targeted. And I thought, boy, that kind of sums it right up right there. Sorry,
Yeah.
straight white men in the room,
Christian.
but you know, I always harken back to Maya Angelou, who says, when people show you who they are, believe them. We know who this president is, so to continue to think it's not hate driven, that it's not siding with white supremacy, it is.
Yes, right.
So
And again, I realize people are dealing with the strategy and the large issues affecting our country, including
Clear.
including that, but also the debt ceiling. And again, as a fiscal conservative, I would say a clean debt ceiling bill. However, if something is attached to it, I think the price of any Democratic approval should be a DACA extension. So again, I certainly think our fellow Texans, fellow Americans in Texas deserve, you know, prompt passage of relief. But that's an important addition. If it's so important to attach to the debt ceiling bill, certainly DACA is equally and as fairly important. So if it's, you know, if it's not going to be a clean bill, I think the price of Democratic votes, maybe more so in the House, but certainly it will affect in the Senate. Again, I don't know if have a majority of opinion of anyone, but that's my opinion.
yeah, I share that.
Mm.
That's a good idea. I also think we wanted to call to your attention something that hasn't been headlines, but it's still chilling. ICE is directing the NARA, I don't know how I say the name, the National Archives and Records Administration, to start shredding and obliterating all of their records on immigrants, including cases of physical abuse, domestic violence, child abuse. It's pretty chilling what they're doing, and it, you know, at first blush it sounds like just cleaning out the house. You know, who wouldn't do that? But it is specifically targeting immigrants, and that's really frightening.
Okay.
Yeah, we need to be able to write the history of this at the end of the day.
I've got something on it from the ACLU if you have trouble finding it.
Yeah, would you just forward it?
Sure, sure.
And again, I read today there are 2,000 to 6,000 American citizens being held in ICE prisons, jails, because they can't prove that they're American citizens. And since they're being held in ICE prisons, they're not entitled to an attorney, and the burden of proof is on them to prove that they're American citizens. And there's an estimate of 2,000 to 6,000 American citizens. Now again, when and there doesn't seem to be any recourse because they're not entitled to an attorney, right?
So this is, they just circle around the system.
That's right.
But they would have to deport him to someplace, right?
Well, part of the problem is
They
they
just
can't
stay
get
in.
out of jail
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they can't prove they're citizens, they can't be deported because
They can't
they
prove they're
can't
not.
prove they're,
Not
so this
citizens.
one guy's stood in jail for 5 years. No, excuse me, 3 years.
So it's an effective way of dealing with enemies.
Right, I mean, theoretically,
Yeah, it
anybody
could
could
be
be put in prison, how could I prove that I was a citizen?
I think it's
Right,
been
if I'm
that.
in
I think
jail.
it's been that way for a while,
Yes.
and it's probably just greatly exacerbated by, a lot more people being dumped in there. But I think it's been the case for a while that you can get caught in a no man's land in the ICE prisons.
Yes.
I'm just
We
so
had
angry
a
and
friend get
hurt.
caught in no man's land here
Yeah.
a couple of years ago.
You know, you can get for $30 this plastic passport that you can just carry around and maybe.
But
we could
not
get-
if you can't make a phone call and you're stuck in a prison.
We could also wear those nice Jewish stars, right? Those 6-pointed yellow stars to make clear who's in and who's not in, right?
And
And that's
also
another way, I'm being a bit facetious, but.
Yeah.
I'm concerned too about the families that are in domestic abuse and being raped and things, and they're afraid to report it. I just did an op-ed that I'm gonna drop at the news office, on this, but there's just so many. I mean, it's hard to come forward anyway for things like that, but with what's going on, they're afraid of being deported. If they, report, and I was reading, I have a lot of statistics at home, so I'm getting it together, but of the cases that have been dropped, I mean, they don't even report anymore, when used to there was a certain amount, and now they're not even getting reported because they're living in fear of
And
deportation.
that's national, but that's right here. Nancy Friedman at DVAC has those numbers now, that people aren't coming forward. Many
Yes.
of the people that she works with are scared to come forward. It's happening anyway. And I know you guys know this, you know who all the dreamers are in our state probably better than we do, but for those of us who've been coming to these offices since January, this is really personal. There's a congressional staffer on that dreamers list. And, he's gotta be scared to death today. And that's just so repugnant. And Hillary Clinton called it deplorable, and she's right. So, there'll be a march out front today, 4:30 to 6. We'll see a lot of the same faces, plus a lot more. We're committed to making as much noise as we need to make, and, we're here to help the senator, and we also keep wanting to hear from him. Want to talk about North Korea? Sure. Since it's so much fun.
They are briefing, senators this week, Mattis, Tillerson, DNI, Pence, and, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Dunford, are briefing all senators on, what's happening with Korea. And the banking committee is also, holding a hearing on, sanctions, enforceability of sanctions and policy options, and so Senator Schatz will be attending that as well. Just the two things he's specifically working on with respect to North Korea.
How confident are you, and how confident is he that this can be resolved with sanctions?
I can't speak for him. I mean, I don't think anybody knows at this point.
Mattis's statement in front of the White House was pretty chilly.
It's kind of
Total annihilation of a country, namely North Korea.
And when you say something like that, I try to be positive about Mattis, but that legitimates their program because that's their protection from being annihilated.
I know, I mean, the senators stood
Nuclear
right here,
weapons.
I stand by the statue, he stands by the flag when we meet, and said he's the grown-up in the room, and I wanna believe that, and I know so many people say that, but boy, those were strong words.
Well, I mean, I think that the situation with, North Korea is moving, and I don't know that anybody knows at this point what sanctions, if sanctions are going to be
it's so terrifying that we're relying on general to be the force of reason when we're talking about using military force versus diplomacy, which I don't see any efforts at all. I don't know, are there? Maybe I just don't read
There's
about
stuff
them.
behind the scenes, I think, but
Well,
it's probably not very.
And you said sanctions. Is there any
Talking about
push
sanctions.
against China because
Well,
they
the secondary sanctions, that's what that committee is gonna be talking about.
Against
Sanctions
China?
policy. Yeah, secondary sanctions.
against secondary countries? That's
Against
what
Chinese
that means.
banks that
I
do
see.
business.
Well, that's good. That's something.
I mean, banks and companies, not just China, but
Mhm.
companies, other countries as well.
Mm-hmm.
You've been doing this a while, right? It's congressional staff.
That's a while.
Maybe not as long as Chuck, but,
Mhm.
I mean, have you seen it like this before? Does it feel like a whole new era to you?
You would expect it to be.
Well, with respect to all of it, Korea, this administration.
This administration, no, I've never seen anything like that. I think with respect to Korea, if you live in South Korea, this feels tense, but not unprecedented.
Yeah, I know a couple of Koreans. They just insist that life is normal. It's business as usual here. We're going out, enjoying ourselves, and working, and doing
Yeah.
the usual thing.
One of my friends is a Korean American, and she is going shopping.
Yeah, well,
A friend, she is. Nothing's gonna stop her. I mean, her parents are Korean, and they feel like this is life as usual.
and the Trump is kinda nuts. That's what somebody said.
Even years ago, my oldest son was in the demilitarized zone in the military between North and South Korea, and he said it was so tense, and that was years ago. But I have a grandson that I adopted and raised. He's grown now, but he speaks fluent Hangul because he has a lot of Korean friends, and he's learned how to speak the language.
Two other things we wanted to talk to you about today are related. One is an issue that I know is near and dear to the Senator's heart. I mean, what happened in Houston is horrible. What's about to happen to the Caribbean and potentially Florida and up the East Coast is equally horrible. And it's in many ways preventable, or at least manageable, if we
Absolutely.
start to address climate change.
That's
And
right.
this administration's inability, and the Republicans' inability to connect those dots that Republicans had connected 10 years ago, is,
Oh, Richard Nixon
Unthinkable.
established the EPA.
yeah, and so at what point do we, take to the streets on this? At what point do we make a lot more noise about the importance of climate and the planet? I mean, North Korea doesn't really matter. We're all underwater in 10 years. I know he speaks loudly on the issue, but is there a strategy? We keep coming back and saying no isn't enough, no is our start, but it's not enough. What do we do next?
I mean, we had a meeting today with staff to talk about just this issue, and our office is looking at convening business leaders. We're looking at convening other members to talk about severe weather and the need to adapt and mitigate. It's still much easier to talk about severe weather than climate change. I mean, not among business leaders. Those guys get it, but so many Republicans just don't want to talk about it. It's climate change. It's like you have to use euphemisms for what it is.
Like sex and pregnancy aren't related.
Exactly. Climate change and severe weather are not related. We just happen to show up at the same time. So I mean, we're doing those kinds of things. We are
But you don't
still
You
actively.
don't address severe weather until you address climate change.
Oh, no, I understand that, yeah.
Yeah.
We are still is still very active. They are planning to, go to Bonn and, present an alternative American case to the world. I don't know if you've seen their website recently, but the number of companies, companies, governors, mayors, attorneys general, university presidents is just quite impressive. So they will have their own pavilion, an alternative United American pavilion at Bonn. We plan to be a part of that as
Maybe you
well.
can shoot that back to me when I share the ACLU stuff with you. 'Cause
Well,
I'm
that's,
sure
I can't,
Oh,
because it's still in planning. I mean, there's nothing confirmed.
okay.
I'm just telling you.
Yeah, that's the only thing we can do right now, I think, is just organize all these local and state level.
And
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's all gonna be, subnational, it's gonna be individuals, it's gonna be companies. That's what's gonna make the difference.
So we're in the process of creating an alt US. I like it.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, states' rights is cool now.
Well, yeah, and we've
Nuance,
seen,
which is
we've seen
beautiful.
that on and off for a while, and there was a wonderful piece on NPR maybe 6 months ago. A guy that owns a company that makes that plastic stuff that comes in your Amazon boxes, the big pillows. And he was shipping it out by the truckload and by the container full because it was already, inflated. And when a state reg came down that he could no longer ship it that way, he created a machine that he could give to or sell at a very low price to his recipients, his customers, and then he could send it deflated. And so his cost of transportation plummeted, and of course with that his carbon footprint. And when the regulation went away, he's like, screw it, I'm not going back.
Sure.
I've got a better business model
Yep.
here.
Well, I think that's why when you look at the We're All In website, you see so many companies, because for them, it's not just good for the planet, but it's good for their bottom line.
Right, and that's what he said. He's like, I'm doing the right thing and I'm saving money.
Exactly.
And my customers like it better because instead of filling their back warehouses with inflated pillows of plastic, they inflate as they need it, so. The last thing on our list, and I know you guys are on this, but we flag it again, is it's so ironic that this is a man that walks around with a hat that says Make America Great Again. And flood insurance the National Flood Insurance Program is at risk. FEMA, Coast Guard, so many of the emergency management agencies are grossly underfunded. Again, these are national issues, but I think for any of us here in Hawaii, it is particularly concerning when we watch this, what are we calling it, severe weather?
Yeah.
When we watch the severe weather bear down on other states, we know it's just it's not if, it's when.
I mean, if you look at the last 12 years, the last 3 big natural disasters in the United States, never mind international, the United States, have all been weather. It's not been earthquake, and it's not been anything else, but it's been weather. All of our coastal communities especially are being vulnerable.
Where's the senator on the National Flood Insurance Program?
I mean, we want to see it reauthorized. But beyond that, I think we need to start looking at those maps. And to do that, you need to have good science, and this administration has not shown, a big interest in science and science. That's a real problem. So it's not just the reauthorization of the existing program, but it's also updating those maps, updating the risks, and then after that, looking at what do we do to mitigate those risks. Because even if the Earth stopped warming today,
research facility for infectious diseases and other like high-risk, researched areas is on the bottom floor at the med school. I've always thought that was uniquely problematic should we have severe weather.
I don't know that there are wet labs on the ground floor.
I don't know.
I know there's that big open
The,
atrium.
yeah, I was gonna say, I don't remember the
There,
atrium for that.
there's the auditorium on the left.
Just an interesting, I don't need you guys to confirm it, we can go poke around over there and figure it out.
There's
But
the
They do have a good
cafeteria.
cafeteria, yeah.
it's just, you know, it's again, that disconnect between climate change and severe weather. Infectious diseases and other high-risk research on the ground floor of an ocean-fronting building is a,
Yeah, I don't think they're actually wet labs, come to think of it, but you know, there are definitely wet labs in that building.
Yeah, yeah.
Lose some data, yeah.
And
Yeah.
big enough wave and the difference in the first floor and the second floor is not real big.
That tsunami.
Anyway, well,
I'd like
thank
to-
you.
I'd like to bring just
Yeah,
one more
sure.
item. I know that Senator Schatz is really all over that issue about net neutrality. I just read what's concerning to me now. Apparently, they had the online comment where you could ask the FCC to keep the current rules regulating the internet service providers as Title II as common carriers. And apparently there were 22 million, it was an unprecedented number of comments. The vast majority were in favor of keeping them regulated. But then the latest I read is that there are apparently a lot of irregularities, spam bots, where there were a number of comments that they think were fake, done by robot, and with false names, false addresses, and I guess the danger there, from what I read, is that the internet providers are using that as a way to discredit the results. And say that there was no overwhelming public support to keep things as they are. And I don't know if there's anything that Senator Schatz can do about that, except the one thing I thought was telling is there's the study of the comments showed that of the ones that where people actually wrote in a handwritten comment as opposed to just use the boilerplate, that was like 20 million to 20,000 in favor of keeping things as is. So I would think that if they just discounted everything that was a boilerplate comment and just looked at the people that wrote in something, which are very unlikely to be spam, I think, there's still a huge majority in favor of the regulation. I don't know, does he have any additional plans, ideas? What's gonna happen?
Those comments are not binding
Right,
on the FCC, you know,
right.
but.
You just worry, I mean, the Republicans on his committee will probably use that as a means of saying, well, it's up in the air, we don't really know. I don't know what they're gonna do, but.
It's, I don't know.
Format is set up to favor lobbyists.
Yeah, and you have to wonder who's behind all the spam bots, right? They're in favor of Comcast and AT&T. I mean,
Aren't we sophisticated enough to know how to count? I mean, you know, there are legitimate comments and then there's spam. We handle our email that way. Surely we can handle comments that way too.
The site also was down for a while.
That disconnect thing again.
disconnect with the facts, right?
Yeah.
And we've addressed with, the chairman.
And what does the chairman say?
No, I can't remember what he responded. I'll look it up, I'll let you know if he
I
responded.
believe he said something anticipating that this is not a vote
Right.
and we don't.
Well, he definitely said that.
He
That-
just
he said
dismissed,
that in his public comments.
right, he dismissed the fact that what people wrote in and the overwhelming majority position did not weigh into his decision
And the
making,
commission
which
did
is
not have.
certainly was an interesting
Interesting.
position.
That was his public comment.
Yes. I mean,
But
I
then that
guess-
raises the question of why you call for comments if you plan on ignoring them.
Exactly. Well, it's a public.
I mean, it's interesting, cause sometimes agencies actually could take into consideration public comments, but apparently Mr. Pond
Or they would at least have to
decided not
explain them away, right?
Just
Some,
at least addressed.
so this is how they're going to discredit it, I
It was
think.
a fascinating statement that a public servant said it didn't matter what people said. I mean,
Isn't
it
it?
was, that's why I remembered it, because it was.
Yeah, it was pretty
one-
shocking, yeah.
Yes,
I
yes,
thought
it was
so,
pretty
too.
shocking. And that he seemed to get away with it, that seemed to be
Well,
accepted.
Not yet, 'cause.
Well, he didn't get called out on it at the time particularly though, right?
Wouldn't that be a violation of the APA? If you put out a call for comment and then state categorically you're gonna ignore the results?
He didn't say he was gonna categorically ignore them, he said that,
They're not binding.
they're not binding,
It was even more, it was something about that there is an overwhelming, that the overwhelming opinion on one side or the other will not affect his consideration.
The fact that that the comments were overwhelmingly in support of net neutrality didn't necessarily mean that that's the way the commission would rule.
I mean, it was,
Well, I think what he said was he was gonna count quality as well as quantity.
I
So if
think
you
it-
have a whole bunch of canned responses, he's
let's
not
look
gonna
that,
weigh
I'll look
those.
that up because it was
Yeah.
strikingly
But ignoring them, I
Yes,
don't think
he's
is a
probably smart
possibility.
enough lawyer not to
Yeah.
get caught that time, but the FCC been caught many times.
You just
We're
have to
heartened to
keep an
hear
eye on it.
about what's going on this week, you know, the banking committee and those things. Please keep us informed and, you know, we'll be back next week. We'll be out there this afternoon, sign waving and making noise. So if you would just pass along to the senator that we're here, we're doing our part. We sure hope he's there doing his.
Things are getting worse and worse.
Banking is, will be on the website.
We're not
Gonna
doing
be
any
as
good.
classified, so
Got it.
will not be.
Got it. Thank you very